All right, so I know I'm a few days late on this news, but I had a lot going on this past weekend. But of course, Brian McLendon has left Georgia to be the wide receivers coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And when that happened, of course, my phone was blowing up. I cover recruiting, so I know what this means. So that's basically what this video is about. What is Georgia missing out on now that Brian McLendon has left? Will it affect recruiting? Where does Georgia go next? You can find those answers over on Dawg Post. I think Dean has some names over on the website. So if you're thinking about who is Georgia going to get at wide receiver, I think Dean's got some names over on Dawg Post. You can sign up by clicking on the free newsletter. That link is down below. But my phone was blowing up. Where does Georgia go from here? Does this affect anything on the recruiting trail? Yada, yada, yada. I'm here to tell you that wide receiver is probably the least important coach right now that Georgia fans need to be worried about for several reasons. Again, Brian McLendon wasn't a guy who was here for a long, long time. I think he was hired in January of 22. I think it was January 22. He only signed 2 wide receivers in that last class. Nitro Tuggle, who I'm sure is not happy with this news, and then Sokobe White, who's going to be a Georgia Bulldog the whole time. They only took 2 wide receivers for a reason. They know that wide receiver is a revolving door right now in college football. Guys are going to leave that aren't catching enough passes. Guys are going to come in who want to win a championship and get developed in the last year or two, right, in college football. That's why guys go to Georgia through the transfer portal. And the staff knows that. They've gone out and had no problem getting big-time wide receivers through the portal that have come to Georgia and made an impact. So I don't think Georgia's going to miss a beat whatsoever on the recruiting trail. And he is a good coach. I'm not trying to say that Brian McLendon is just completely replaceable, even though he is. But I just want to tell the Georgia fans, this is not that big of a deal. He is a good coach because Kirby Smart hired him, because he's a good coach, and he does do a good job on the recruiting trail. But another question I get is, why can't Georgia sign 5-star wide receivers? I've heard that for years and years and years. And it's pretty simple. Number one, you don't have to have elite wide receivers to win a national championship. It helps, but guys like A.D. Mitchell, who caught some big passes, he caught a touchdown in every college football playoff game he played at Georgia. He wasn't a 5-star, right? Ladd McConkey was not a 5-star. Brock Bowers was not a 5-star. So the 5-star wide receivers are overrated. Number two, those 5-star wide receivers, you've got to pay them, right? They've got big eyes as far as NIL goes. What can they get, right? Georgia was never getting Jeremiah Smith, right? I mean, it just wasn't. He had a number in his head. Ohio State was all about it, and they, develop and recruit wide receivers very well. You don't have to, that's not how you win a championship. Georgia used their resources and their NIL money to improve the line of scrimmage. And you saw that in the 24 class, both on the offensive and defensive line. I know a lot of those offensive linemen that they signed said, hey, it's going to take this amount of money to sign me, to get me to Georgia. This is what I'm looking for. And Georgia ponied up and they said, okay, we want you because we want a bigger, stronger offensive line. We want playmakers on defense. We want game wreckers. Yeah, that's where the money and the resources went. And in the secondary, too, getting guys like KJ Bolden and Ellis Robinson. And you got the number 1 linebacker in the country out of Texas. Yeah, you're going to have to make sure he gets what he's looking for through NIL, right? But a wide receiver, that's the last group I think Georgia is going to shell out NIL money for. And especially if you go out and get a 5-star wide receiver, and other schools are going to notice this too. Not only do you have to pay for that player whatever he wants, which is a lot. Wide receivers are divas. Everyone knows that. They get angry when they don't catch the ball, and they're going to look for somewhere else, right? So if you go out and get this kid or sign this high school kid and show him all this NIL money you can give him, and he doesn't catch enough passes that he wants as a freshman because he's great, he's the best thing since sliced bread. He wants to come and catch 100 passes as a freshman and get paid big money. It's not going to work, because when he doesn't get those 100 catches, he's going to leave. So you went through all that work to sign this 5-star wide receiver. And I'm not talking about anyone specifically, but it happens quite often. He could leave in a year, and then you got to go and get another one. So at Georgia, they're like, that's fine. Wide receiver, we'll get 2 or 3 guys and do what we can with them, try to develop them. But if there's a guy in the transfer portal that can help us immediately, we'd rather have that kid. And this is not a situation where you sign the offensive lineman and defensive lineman and you develop them and you keep them for years and years and years and then you turn them over to the NFL, right? Georgia's not developing, or they're not producing first-round wide receivers, and they don't have to. Kirby Smart's job is to win national championships, and he's done that 2 out of 3 years. And Brock Bowers, who is a pass catcher, should go in the top 10. Vlad McConkey will get drafted. Marcus Rosemary-Jackson will get drafted. A.D. Mitchell will get drafted. I think Jermaine Burton will get drafted. All of those players got better when they got to Georgia. And all of those guys won national championship. None were 5 stars. So it's not the end of the day if Georgia continues to not sign 5-star wide receivers, and I don't think they're going to. Whoever Kirby Smart ends up hiring for the wide receiver position, if you're expecting that guy to go out and sign 1 or 2 5-star wide receivers every year, it's not going to happen. You're going to be disappointed because that's not where the funds are going, and you can win without that. Get you some high-level, competitive, talented 3-star guys who may not be the biggest or fastest, but can run around and catch the ball and play tough physical football and love to compete and love the program. Get you some 4 stars who are very talented, and you're just fine. As long as you have an offensive line and a quarterback who knows what he's doing. And they got that. Georgia's got that, right? You'll be fine at wide receiver. So are they going to have a massive drop-off at the wide receiver coach? Probably not. Brian McLendon's a good coach, and he is a good recruiter. He showed that at other places, but it's hard to prove that when you're just signing 2 wide receivers in a class because you're not going to overpay for a 5-star that you don't really want playing. We have seen freshman wide receivers play at Georgia. George Pickens, 2019, Jermaine Burton, 2020, A.D. Mitchell, 2021, Dylan Bell, 2022. So, yeah, freshman receivers can play at Georgia, but it's not ideal. You'd rather have experienced, veteran, guys who have made big plays before. You'd rather have those guys as your starters. You don't want to throw out freshman wide receivers, not unless you have to. And Georgia doesn't have to. And they don't have to walk into a room of a 5-star wide receiver and tell his parents, hey, we can play you, year 1, you can catch this many passes, make this much money. They don't have to do that. Auburn has to do that. Other programs have to do that. Georgia said, we're going to win without you, man. There's no one's a must-have at Georgia. There's not a single must-have recruit. Auburn, Tennessee, Florida, South Carolina, there are several must-have recruits. One player is not going to make or change Georgia. Georgia's going to be very, very good for a long time. They could never sign a 5-star wide receiver again, and they will still win national championships down the road. So it's not a big deal. If Georgia just signs, a couple 3 stars, a couple 4 stars at wide receiver, totally fine. They can win with those guys. And if those guys aren't playing, they'll transfer out, and Georgia's look through the transfer portal and say, okay, we'll bring in y'all. You, and you, right? I mean, it just doesn't matter the way it used to. Offensive line recruiting, defensive line recruiting, quarterback, got to get your running backs, got to get a safety like Malachi Starks to come in and, be a dude, be a guy, be a first rounder, and stay and love the program and do it the right way. And you're going to have to get KJ Bolden. Those guys are going to play too. So sorry. Got a few text messages that pop up. So when you see me do this number like an owl, Kennesaw State, I'm reading a text. But yeah, this is not a big deal. Georgia's going to be just fine at wide receiver. They're going to be just fine at wide receiver recruiting. But just know when they're not signing that 5-star receiver, it's because they're trying to sign a 5-star tackle, a 5-star defensive lineman, 5-star linebacker, 5-star safety. Everyone knows that they can make money through NIL. And a lot of guys, that's the only thing they care about. They don't care where they go. They want to play early, but they want to get paid. And at Georgia, that's not how they use NIL. They said, we'll try to keep you happy and give you some money, but we're trying to develop you so you can make NFL dollars. Most programs can't recruit like that. Georgia can. And whoever they hire at wide receiver, he's going to come in and can recruit the same way. Hey, if you come here, I will make you a better receiver. You're going to win a lot of games, possibly a national championship, and you'll probably get drafted if you stay the course and stay here for 3 or 4 years and are open to learning and developing more and more and more. You're going to be just fine. So I got a lot of text about this, about him leaving, and it just is what it is. These college coaches, it's such a grind. They all want to leave as soon as they can because it's a year-round job. The recruiting calendar is just ridiculous. As soon as the regular season ends, it's almost like things get crazier for college coaches to recruit the high school levels, recruit their own players by not leaving through the transfer portal. It's crazy. It's madness. It's got to change. I don't blame Brian McLendon for leaving, but it's not a big deal. It's just not. Thanks for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope to see you over on the website. And again, you can sign up by clicking on our free newsletter. That link is down below to read a whole bunch of free stories. Thanks, and I'll see you over on the website.